Diolch yn fawr iawn. Fi gyda ni fwy yn Caernarfon heb ymbarel, so os dwi'n aros fan mwy na 4 munud, da chi'n gwybod pam. Mae'r siaradwyr blaenorol, a dwi'n siŵr fydd y siaradwyr i ddilyn i gyd yn sôn am gwahanol agweddau o'r frwydr sy'n o'n blaen ni. Dwi eisiau siarad am rhywbeth gwahanol. Y ffordd mae'r mudiad yma yn gallu tyfu, am y ffordd mae pobl yn bwerus. Mae gennych chi y pŵer, mae gennych chi y grym i wneud gwahaniaeth. Nid mewn gwledydd pelledig, tramor, exotic, nid mewn Cymru ganrifoedd sydd wedi bod, ond yma rwan. Yn yn oes i, dwi'n cofio sut ar yn ei drechu llywodraeth. A dwi am drwy'r Saesneg, achos dwi eisiau i bobl fel fi sydd wedi dod o Wrexham heddiw i ddall beth dwi'n dweud, so meddewch i mi am hynny. Mass movements don't start as mass movements. They start as a couple of friends moaning down the pub. They start as workmates complaining. People wanting to do something. A group forms. They organise a public meeting. They come together in a march, hopefully a bit drier than today. They make a homemade banner. It becomes part of a bigger movement. The stream trickles into the river. It becomes a flood. The flood becomes an unstoppable tide against the government. But it's really just you and a few friends who keep the bandwagon rolling. You worry that it's not enough, that it's just you and a couple of friends. Don't worry. I want to tell you about 20 years ago. The anti-poll tax campaign took on Thatcher in all her post-Falklands, post-miners' strike glory. She had beaten the enemy without. She had beaten the enemy within. The Tories thought they would rule forever. The 1,000-year Reich was upon us. But although the unions were battered, although the political opposition was shattered, there were people still willing to fight. And there were pockets of people who were willing to take on the Tories. They encouraged others to have the confidence not to pay, even in the face of the law. In Wrexham, in my hometown, a group of no more than 12 people terrified a local council. We clogged up the courts and gave the impression of being a mass movement. This is a different type of campaign. The Con-Fib-Dem coalition is a far more fragile enemy than Thatcher ever was. They haven't got the guts for a fight. But it's also similar in many ways. Like the poll tax, where a duke paid the same flat rate as a dustman, there is a fundamental injustice at work here. The injustice is in making the poor, those on benefits, the students of the future, public sector workers, and people reliant on public services, making the poorest pay for the mistakes of the rich and powerful. We saved the banks, and what was the bank's response? They gave themselves £7 billion in bonuses. Vodafone was excused a £6 billion tax bill by their Tory mates. That's about the same as the amount of cuts made to the welfare system so far. The students have inspired us all, even as old farts. We need a united front of trade unionists, community groups, students, and all those affected by these cuts to make sure that the only cuts made are at the top, to bonuses and big bucks paid to the rich. And that includes public sector chief executives earning more than the First Minister. The raw anger we've seen on the street so far is just the first sign of the trickle becoming a flood. If it carries on like this, we'll need Noah's Ark, mind. This is starting to look like the mass movements. Wales has an added defence against the worst of the cuts. The Assembly is potentially a powerful tool. Look how it's invested in the next generation of students rather than punishing them. That's why we, as trade unionists, will be campaigning for a stronger Assembly to counter the millionaires' club that masquerades as a government in London. A na gloi ar hyn. Rwan dysgen myfyrwyr Cymru ddim gymaint o reswm i brotestio. Be newn nhw? Mae gennau gynnig iddyn nhw. Gai awgrymu'n garedig bod nhw ffeindio siop gosa Vodafone a mynd yna i brotestio a gofyn am ei pres yn ôl. Gai ofyn iddyn nhw fod yn rhan, i Vodafone, fod yn rhan o'r gymdeithas fawr. Dio ddim yn gymdeithas fawr pan mae'r werin sy'n talu a'r crachas sy'n elwa. Diolch yn fawr iawn.